Welcome to Buc What You Heard. My name is Gene. You can reach me at Super Heavyweight. You follow me, I'll follow you back. And tonight I am joined by the guys formerly from Locked on Bucs. And Jimmy, I'm going to start with you, man. We're going to kind of go around a little bit. Tell everybody about you, how they can get a hold of you, and we'll start with you.
Yeah, well, and we still do Locked on Bucs. We used to be with the Pewter Plank. Now we are over at Bucs Nation. Big shout out, Gil. He brought David and myself over from the Pewter Plank. And yeah, you can find me on Twitter at JYarko_Bucs.
All right. And David, how you doing tonight, my friend?
Doing great, Gene. How are you?
All right. Hopefully you had a good holiday. Tell everybody how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, so you can find me at Twitter at DH80 or DH82_Bucs. And again at the Locked on Bucs podcast, and then now over at Bucs Nation, writing for them.
All right. Man, Locked on Bucs. Folks, if you haven't and you aren't following them, please follow them. Great content, especially during the football season. They'll definitely keep you up to date on everything. The podcasts are great. I love your podcast. I'm a big fan myself. It's one of those things that gets me through the week, when you guys drop it and I'm at work and I get a chance to listen. That's, one of the many podcasts that I listen to, but I really enjoy your stuff. So what I was going to do, I pretty much touched on the most polarizing portion of this off season that I can really think of. And I kind of want to get away from that. And I know that you guys are working on position for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and who's going to be where. So, and I don't know if we touched on this since the last time you guys have been on. For you guys, what is the most important right now with the off season going into the regular season, based on what we saw in 2017? What do you guys see as one of the key positions or sides of the ball that, the Bucs really need to be looking at and that you guys are looking at?
David, you want to go first? You want me to go first?
Yeah, I'll take it. So
right.
What I'm really looking at is the cornerback position. And I think Vernon Hargreaves, I think it's pretty much well established that he's going to get his opportunity to play outside again and, see whether or not he can solidify his position out there, because honestly, especially in the training camp phase and in the preseason, even with the Buccaneers having spent a first-round draft pick on him and with his fifth-year option decision coming up next offseason, there's no reason for the Buccaneers not to at least give him one more trip around the offseason, the preseason, and see if he can fix all the things that he's had problems with before they make a final decision to cement him as a slot cornerback. Because if they cement him on the inside, they're not picking up his option. You're not going to pay a slot cornerback that much money. And so that opens the door to other things and obviously more criticism, which I think the criticism is probably at the bottom of the priority list, but it's still there. It's still something that's there. And as a franchise, you don't want negativity surrounding your team and with everything else that's going on. So it makes sense for them to give him that opportunity. I do believe that his future is in the inside. I believe that since the day he was drafted, and that there's nothing I've seen that's going to change my opinion on that as of right now. Whether or not the Buccaneers try to keep forcing that square peg into a round hole is still to be seen. But I think in the beginning, we're going to see him open up on the outside with Carlton Davis challenging there. And then beyond Grimes, Hargreaves, and Davis, that's where everything's wide open. I mean, Ryan Smith has some experience in playing time. He's got raw athleticism. Can he put it all together is a big question. How the other rookies are going to fit into this whole thing. And then we've got the supplemental draft coming up as well, and you could hear a new name brought into there. And, of course, there's always free agents out there looking for a job, and you never know what's going to happen. So that's the position I'm looking at the most going into training camp.
And we're just going to stay on the cornerback position. Do you feel like Vernon Hargreaves has the physical tools to actually excel in that position? I know some people, it takes a long time for them to grow into a specific position. I've seen draft picks take a long time to mature, to catch up with the speed of the NFL. Is this one of those cases where you think that Vernon Hargreaves does have an opportunity to grab that outside position and hold on to it?
I don't see anything yet. I haven't seen anything in his time in the NFL to make me think that's a possibility. Obviously, I mean, he's had a long time since the last time we saw him on the field to work on what he's doing, work on the mental side of it. Honestly, I think a lot of it is read and reaction problems, not so much athletic tools. I think that the physical traits are there. I know he's a shorter guy, but so is Brent Grimes, and Vernon Hargreaves. If he's going to be successful on the outside, he's going to learn how to win with his mind and learn how to play with body positioning and reading body language of a wide receiver, and kind of picking up on some of those traits week to week of his opponent the way that Brent Grimes does. If he can do that, then sure, he could carve out an outside role on an NFL roster, whether it be in Tampa or somewhere else, depending on how everything goes. But as of right now, I still see a smaller cornerback who doesn't react fast enough and doesn't anticipate enough on outside receivers who are normally bigger and longer than he is to make him effective the way that the Buccaneers need him to be. Is
that coachable, or you think that's mental? Is it possible to come away and actually improve at some point, just to get better, with basically what you're talking about, the reaction, and is that something that's coachable, I guess is what I'm asking.
I mean, I think it's the study habits that are going to be coachable, and I think that they have been coached, because you look at a guy like Justin Evans and the improvement he was able to make just from entering as a rookie to the end of last season. Obviously, there are some learning mechanisms in place in one Buc in the coaching staff that are able to facilitate a young guy making growth in leaps and bounds, even in the course of one season. And I don't want to take away, like, I'm not saying that Vernon's not studying. But there's an old saying that you can't fix stupid. And I'm not saying Vernon Hargreaves is stupid by any means, but everyone has kind of their ceiling from a mental standpoint. And like baseball, you call it the yips and all that. Some guys they're never going to be able to get over that mental wall that is built in there. And what I saw last year is it looks like a guy who is scared to play up close and tight on bigger bodied receivers, guys who are longer than him, because he knows that they have a physical advantage over him. And I think that's overcompensation for him, knowing also whether it's at the forefront of his mind or in his subconscious that he doesn't have enough instinctual talent to beat them physically right now and catch up for where he's lacking in size.
All right, Jimmy.
Mine's kind of a two-headed monster, what I'm looking at, and I'll go to the opposite side of the ball that David did. I'm looking at the offensive line / running back. The running back position was pretty putrid last year. Peyton Barber did some great things at the tail end of the season, but it wasn't enough during the course of the season to be considered a threatening or effective run game. Then you have the change at the offensive line. You bring in Jensen. They got rid of Sweezy. You move Marpet back to guard. I want to see how all of this kind of works together, and if they can really get that run game going. We know Dirk Cutter likes to use the run game a lot. Jameis Winston is at his best when he's coming off of play action, but without a solid run game, the play action is meaningless. There's no point in doing it because the defense isn't buying in. So I'm really interested to see how Ronald Jones is going to fit. Something that we talked about on the last episode of Locked On Bucs is kind of how the carry share is going to work between Jones and Barber to start the season, going deeper into the season, which one's really going to take the reins and become that top running back. You still have Jacquizz Rodgers there. You have Charles Sims, which, for those that don't know, I'm not a Charles Sims guy. I am not going to be the least bit upset if he's a camp casualty. You have the rookie out of Duke, is Sean Wilson, who seemed to emerge during rookie minicamp and OTAs. So I'm really interested to see how the new running back core works together and how the time is split, as well as how the offensive line is, gelling together and making the run game more effective to help the offense.
Yeah. And guys, as I don't know if you've listened, over the past few weeks, I have been talking about the wide receiver position. We know what you have in Mike Evans. You know what you have with Deshaun Jackson. And I've said this, going into the end of last year, there was a chemistry issue between Jameis Winston and Deshaun Jackson. And I stand by what I say, because you saw that with Jameis Winston and Mike Evans. First time they played together, they were just off chemistry-wise. But the next year, they put it all together. I feel like, you're going to see the same thing this year with a Deshaun Jackson, who is a consummate professional. Despite all the negative stigmas that are on him, he is a consummate professional. And I feel like him and Jameis Winston can get things together once he comes back. That position right there is really intriguing me, because Chris Godwin is you keep hearing his name,
Mhm.
whether it's mini camp, whether it's OTAs, whatever it's been. Going in, even last year when he was a rookie coming in to camp, when Dirk Cutter said this young man is prepared, always prepared, that says a lot for a rookie to, when you're talking about a rookie, you're not talking about, you already know what his physical tools are, but the fact that he's coming in prepared like a professional, coming from college to the pro level, and to be able to do that, he's not doing nothing but boosting his stock. And the walk-off touchdown at the end of the season, really helped him, going into the offseason. And just hearing what he's doing and not dropping balls and just being consistent, I see him moving up on that depth chart. And I can't wait to see the actual physical hitting and just see how he does, because I really believe that this guy was a steal of the draft year before last, where we're just based on what he's doing right now, and his upside is going to be really amazing.
Oh, for sure. And of course, David and I are both huge fans of of Godwin, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he gets implemented a little bit more into the offense. He was used in spurts his rookie season, which is completely understandable. You had Mike Evans out there, you had Deshaun Jackson, you had Adam Humphries, you have Cameron Brate and OJ Howard, you have all these weapons, and we saw that kind of, they have so many weapons that it almost became a fault. Jameis wasn't sure where to distribute the ball. He was trying to force things into guys. We saw that issue.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to start to see the more of an emergence out of Chris Godwin and a smaller usage out of Adam Humphries. Adam Humphries, I believe, I could be wrong off the top of my head, I'm pretty sure he only has the 1 year left on his deal. He signed that 1 year tender. Mm-hmm. There's really not going to be space for Adam Humphries in the offense moving forward. That's why they drafted Godwin. They could re-sign him because they can walk away from Deshaun Jackson after the season with no cap hit or things like that. But you're looking at the emergence of Chris Godwin being the future number 2 on this team.
Absolutely.
You need to continue to utilize Cameron Brate. He's one of the best tight ends in the NFL. You have OJ Howard, who needs to be utilized more.
That's a guy right there, and I want to stop you right here, because that's a guy that I was very frustrated with that they didn't use him more. He's a physical specimen. Just watching him away from the ball, watching him block, watching him hold guys up that are bigger than him, and just the speed that he has. And I just don't feel like he was utilized like he should have been. I understand he's a rookie, but if this guy's out here producing on the field, you have to get him more involved.
Yeah, well, and I think you're going to see OJ used almost more like that tight end receiver hybrid, more so than a true tight end like we see with Cameron Brate. I mean, and Cameron Brate runs some great routes, but he can't
block.
He doesn't have the speed. Oh yeah, he can't block, but he doesn't have the speed that OJ does to expose some of these defensive matchups that he's going to see with linebackers or safeties or things like that. So again, and it was something that I wrote when OJ was drafted. The usage of a rookie tight end is very minimal. So what OJ did last year as a rookie tight end was pretty much on par with the top tier tight ends now. What Gronk did, what Kelsey did, what that kid out of Minnesota that I can't, Rudolph. What Rudolph did. He's right in line with those guys. So it's not one of those things where he was a bust. They reached. Why did they pick him? Why didn't they pick Dalvin Cook? Blah 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 blah.
His upside is huge.
Exactly. And it takes time for these tight ends to really establish themselves in these offenses, because the offenses are so complicated. And there are guys like Mike Evans and Deshaun Jackson that he's lining up with that he has to share the ball. So, the more time you get from OJ, the more effective and the more dominant he's going to become. 2-3 years from now, excuse me, we're going to be talking about him in the same breath as the other top tier tight ends, because he has that kind of talent. It's a matter of utilization at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Dave.
No, yeah, I mean, I agree completely. I think that OJ is a really great talent. That's why James and I kind of brought into question last year a little bit on the future of Cameron Brate. And fortunately for all of us, including the team themselves, Cameron Brate was willing to come back for honestly much less money than he probably could have gotten on the open market had he played his cards right and ended up in the free agency pool eventually. And I agree too with the future of Adam Humphries. I mean, I think that when you look at the wide receiver depth chart right now in 2019, either Deshaun Jackson or Adam Humphries are not going to be on this team simply because of the war of attrition. I mean, you can't, it's kind of like the same problem that the Golden State Warriors have in the NBA, right? There's only one ball to go around, and eventually someone's not going to get fed enough, and they're going to want to go find a new home to live in. Yeah. And I feel like actually it's probably most likely going to be Deshaun. I kind of feel like if Chris Godwin can continue the upward trajectory that he's on this year and show why all the coaches and the players have been ranting and raving about it in the preseason, that he'll get those opportunities in the regular season. Yeah. And as long as he can capitalize on them again in the regular season and stay healthy, then I think next year we have a 1-2 combination of Mike Evans and Chris Godwin with Adam Humphries coming back in the slot, because I feel like the bond between guys like Adam Humphries and Cameron Brate, I think, is very real. And I think that's one of the reasons Cameron Brate decided to come back on such a discounted contract. And I feel like Adam Humphries is probably going to follow suit if given the opportunity, which would then obviously require Deshaun Jackson to be held elsewhere, which also fiscally helps out the Buccaneers as they try to re-sign some of these other younger players that have become the nucleus of this team. So it really just all kind of fits together for me the way that I see it, with Deshaun Jackson leaving. I don't know, maybe he heads back to Philly to end his career. That'd be a good way for him to finish out his time in the NFL, whatever he does in his future.
Carlson to Tampa, is that true? Is that a thing?
It's a thing.
It's a thing. Go ahead and let's talk about it, man. That's crazy.
We don't have any details yet. They're waiting for the call to the league office, but yeah. Sources say that Carlson deal to Tampa is done pending a call with the league office.
Wow.
Yeah, I know James has been waiting on that all day, and I knew it was going to happen while we were on.
Yeah.
It's been driving me nuts. Well, and if you can't tell by my shirt, my day job, I deliver bread. That's my job. I go to grocery stores. I deliver bread. I was at my last store today when the rumors really started to pick up that it looked like this was going to get done. And I'm sitting there refreshing Twitter, constantly putting up bread, one-handed, one loaf at a time. It took me forever. I was like, oh, my God, it's finally going to happen. Yeah, but you guys are going to see me cry live on air if they traded Braden Point.
Yeah, well, we'll have to kind of wait and see what happens with what the details are. I'm not seeing anything either, so just wanted to put that out there. We'll kind of get back to the Bucs, but definitely some Bolts action. I'm all about Tampa. So you will see here as soon as the Rays do end up moving to Tampa, I'll have a special something going on. You'll see. But it's kind of getting back to this. We were talking about Cameron Brate and Adam Humphries. Adam Humphries to me is the Lazarus man, because him and Chris Conte, every single year they're gone, they're out, they're just dead with the team, and then all of a sudden they rise up from the dead and they're back out on the field. So until that actually happens, I'm just gonna be like, yeah, okay, we'll see what happens. But one of the listeners had a question about Fitzpatrick. Do we think that Fitzpatrick is going to take first team snaps during the preseason? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm gonna let David take that one.
So I was actually thinking about this earlier, right? And you look at like the preparations of the thing, and I don't know, I haven't gotten too deep. Like I haven't really fleshed out the whole thought process yet. So there's still probably some holes in it that I haven't addressed yet. It's actually something I was considering writing over at Bucs Nation. So like I said, it hasn't been completely fleshed out, but I kind of look back at, and this is kind of what I plan on doing, is looking back.
I don't want to mess up all your spoilers. I don't want to put any spoilers out there.
No. Like I said, I haven't really fleshed out all the things yet. So I kind of want to go back and look at some players who have kind of underwhelmed, right? And not just with the Buccaneers, but perhaps even some other teams. And find out really what they were preparing for entering the season that they underwhelmed, right? I think back to Doug Martin, and what was Doug Martin really preparing to do last year when he came back to the Buccaneers? And I kind of look back on it, and really what he was looking to do was become a clean football player, right? And I think he did that. So if that's what he prepared to do last season, he was successful. Now, obviously, it's not what Buccaneers fans wanted him to do, and it's not necessarily what the franchise wanted him to do. But as an individual player, that's what he spent his offseason preparing to do, is become a clean football player. And according to everything we know, he was successful. Jameis Winston is spending this part of his offseason, and I think it's probably, like, I know we all kind of sat at the surface of the pond waiting for the fish to jump and all that stuff, but I think that underneath the surface, Jameis Winston, his legal team, the NFL, the franchise, they've been kicking like ducks, dealing with this Uber driver thing for probably the most of the offseason. And where is his mind at? Is he preparing to be a franchise leading quarterback to get the Buccaneers to the playoffs, or is he preparing to be a quarterback who's very much fighting for his reputation and his future? Because those are two different things. Right. And then I kind of took that to another level, to the Buccaneers. And are the Buccaneers going to prepare to win the first 3 games of the year, or are they going to prepare to survive without Jameis and win with Jameis when he gets back? Because, again, those are two different things. If Jameis Winston doesn't play regularly or like he would normally in the preseason, then we're talking 7 weeks of football that he's going to either miss or have a very significantly detracted role in, and then coming in week 4, right in the midst of things, as every other NFL player is really getting their juices going, he's now just firing out the gates.
Yeah.
If that's how the Buccaneers approach this, then that's what they're going to get, is a week 4 quarterback who is trying to resurrect his image and kind of worry about his future as an individual, who also is starting cold, right? Yeah. But if they do that, or if they don't do that, right, if they don't prepare to win the first 3 games, well, then we could end up in a week 4 where Jameis Winston had some extra snaps in the preseason, if you want to call it that, but he's inheriting a team in week 4 that's 1-2 or 0-3. So,
well, and I have to ask you guys, when I look at the schedule, everybody's talking about the world champion Eagles. This is not the same Eagles team that won the Super Bowl, number one. I look at the Steelers. The Steelers, this is not the same Steelers team from last season. These are winnable games. And I'm not saying that because I'm a homer. I look at the talent that the Bucs have. If they can put it all together on the field like we see on paper, these are all winnable games. These should be winnable games. And I don't think I'm outside the realm of possibility by saying that. But I really believe that this team can put it all together and get themselves together going into the season. These are winnable games. So I get what you're saying, and to me, I guess you would. And see, I don't know. This is, again, I'm not a head coach. I'm just a jerk off with a podcast, So I really don't know. All I can tell you is if I'm a head coach, I'm trying to prepare my guy to win these games, these first 3 games. We're going, because these are winnable games, in my opinion, going out there to win these games and get ready to, push for the season, and that's kind of how I look at it. I look at the schedule. A lot of these games are winnable games. I don't see a team out there that I'm like, wow, they're gonna blow the Bucs out of the water. I just don't see it. I think these are, if they come in, the ball bounces right, you may need some luck or whatever, but these are all winnable games. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I mean, when's the last time the ball bounced right for us, Gene?
Okay. All right. Pee in my cornflakes, all right.
I think you're right. And I had the opportunity recently to be on an Our Lads podcast, and I actually said a very, very similar thing to what you just said with him over there, and is that how often in modern NFL history have we seen a Super Bowl team suffer from the hangover and not even make the playoffs? You look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers alone; they haven't won a playoff game since they won the Super Bowl. That's not how that's supposed to work. If you win the Super Bowl, sorry to bring that up. If you win the Super Bowl,
hangover ever.
Yeah, you're supposed to be a really legit contending roster, and it shouldn't take one season to deconstruct all that. But in today's NFL, it really does. That's why teams like the Patriots are so amazing and such an anomaly, right? Because one thing that the NFL does better than the NBA is provide parity. Like, parity in the NBA is non-existent. But in the NFL, it's existent, to the nth degree. Like, every year, we've got NFL Network specials on which team's going to go from worst to first in the National Football League, because it happens so often that it's something we can actually discuss. Just the other day, there's a tweet going around, a thread said, retweet this with your bold prediction or your hot take for the year, and I put on there, Browns are going to win the AFC North. It's a thing that could actually happen if you look at the state of the Steelers, you look at the state of the Ravens, you look at the state of the Bengals. The Steelers are definitely the best team in that division, of course, But you look at the Ravens and Bengals, and those are two teams that are not what they used to be in recent times. And even the Steelers, losing Ryan Shazier is an incredible loss for that defense. And we've seen it happen time and time again. Yeah, we've seen the Rudy effect, right? And not for nothing, but there's a little bit of a Rudy effect last year with the Steelers defense after Ryan left. That Rudy effect is going to be gone. Like that only lasts for so long. And now Ryan Shazier is still not on the field, but that Rudy effect is now worn off, and that clock has hit zero. So now we're going to see the Steelers defense, and if they really are what they looked like last year, and if the Ravens and the Bengals and the Browns get even a little bit better, that's going to bring the Steelers down to earth a little bit, so on and so forth. The Buccaneers are in the exact same situation, and you're 100% right. There is no team on the schedule that's just a guaranteed loss. Like, take your money to Vegas, put the slip down against the Buccaneers because you're going to make money on that game. It just doesn't exist. But again, it comes down to the same thing it came down to last year, which is execution and a couple breaks going our way.
I really want to throw this out here because somebody brought this up a couple of weeks ago, and I have to ask you guys: a 5-win season. You're on this hype train. You got this hype train. You got all these different things going on in the beginning of the season. Everybody's on board, and you have a 5-win season. Does that humble this team and make them realize that you have to go out and win every single game? Is that a possibility that this changed their mentality, getting kicked in the face with a 5-win season where they could have done a whole lot better?
I think it was a big reality check. And I think once the punch to the gut really happened, it was too late. Things had unraveled so much at that point that there was no bouncing back from it. We've seen Gerald McCoy talk about it on social media. He posted a video on Instagram either yesterday or today, I can't remember, and it was him pulling into One Buc Place with a big banner on the video that said "No more excuses." But we've heard that kind of talk before, so it's up to
every year.
It's up to these guys. Yeah, it's up to these guys to realize how much talent they have and what they can accomplish. And what I've said is, if the Buccaneers don't win this season, and of course now the Winston suspension kind of throws a little bit of a wrench into it, but as you said, and I agree, the Bucs can come away, it's not a guarantee they're coming away 0-3 from this 3-game stretch. These teams change all the time. Philadelphia was plucked over. You have Pittsburgh, and they're notorious for slow starts, and they usually pick it up towards the end of the season. Lost my train of thought.
It's possible. It's possible.
Yeah. So if they don't win this season, to me, it's no longer a talent problem. It's a coaching problem. Whether it's the head coach, whether it's the coordinators, whoever it is, this team on paper is too talented not to win games. If you brought in Mike Tomlin, if you brought in, Bill Belichick, and of course I'm naming two of the best coaches in football, but if you bring these guys in, they're going to a conference championship with the talent on this team. They will find a way to maximize that talent and get wins. If you went up to somebody, for God's sakes, Marvin Lewis could win a playoff game with this team. Like, that's how talented it really is. So, Jameis's suspension notwithstanding, even if they can tread water enough to finish 1-2 in that 3-game stretch, then you have Jameis return against the Bears. Then he gets a bye week. Now you have a stretch where you have 12 games coming up, and there's nobody in front of you that you are not able to beat. So, yeah, I mean, this team is incredibly talented, and I look at it as it's the ultimate litmus test as to how bad these players want it, how pissed off they are from last season, from disappointing everyone, from themselves to the franchise itself, to the fans that bought in, and how good are these coaches at actually utilizing the talent that's at their disposal.
Yeah, and that's the key right there. How do you bounce back from a 5-win season when you were projected by everybody to go to playoffs and it just didn't happen? You realize, and I'm hoping and praying that this is what they're realizing. You know what? We just mailed it in. We thought we were going to win every game just by showing up, and it didn't happen like that. We realized you got to come in and put in work. one thing that I will kind of go back and I want to ask you guys, with the mini camp, there was a lot more. It was a lot more aggressive. There was a lot more going on. It was a lot more energized than it was the year before, from what I keep hearing. There was a lot more going on with that camp. So I'm hoping that this continues to carry on into the regular camp and even into the practices with the Titans as well. So this is something that I'm hoping that this kind of catches on and continues on. Sorry, I was reading the chat here. So yeah, I'm sorry. So I mean, what do you guys think? I mean, is that a possibility? I mean, is that what were you guys able to go to any of the mini camps?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay. Yeah, and just talking to the guys that were there, they said there was a lot more, they were a lot more serious, and you saw a lot more communication. It was a lot more lively than it was last year. And I know it's only camp, practice in underwear or whatever they call it. But, I just hope that this can carry on. This is something where they can see that, that 5 games, they have to do better, because, you're looking at potentially, and I'm not out of the realm of reason here saying you're looking at potentially blowing this team up and starting all over from scratch if, it could come to that. If it's, if things don't come together like they're supposed to.
Yeah, I mean, I was hearing about the change in attitude, and I think that in a mini camp is actually probably the most important thing you're going to see in mini camp is the way that this franchise, the way that this team is going to conduct their business. And listening to guys like Brent and Wren, who were able to attend for a couple of those days or all those days, and talking about the just the different feel of the way things were being done, that's incredibly encouraging, because I think that is where a lot of the problems started last year, was kind of this loose, relaxed, environment experience of, essentially buying into your own hype. And, I kind of said it earlier in the offseason where Coach Cutter kind of came out, and I don't want to say he blamed the media, but he kind of tried to push off responsibility for the hype building to everybody else. But he was just as much a part of it as everybody else was. I mean, he was out there with the stick carriers, holding the Godfather painting and getting HBO cameras over there and all that. And don't get me wrong, I love it, but I'm just saying, own it and be real about it. And then when you're changing it up, because at the same time, this is the same man who said that the culture of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers needed to change. It did change, but it turns out that it changed the wrong way. And now you're correcting, and there's nothing wrong with that. We all make mistakes and we all correct and do those things that we need to do. And hopefully that's what the Buccaneers are doing. And I think that the fans also feel that change in Tide. And I think that everybody's really just kind of hesitant to get excited again, because you don't want to be burned again. And, I think it's a good thing, though. I think we will see it carry over to training camp in the preseason.
Yeah, most definitely. So I did want to ask you guys, what did you think of the Sweezy of J.R. Sweezy getting cut? I mean, was that something you guys expected, or it was just so hush hush? I personally didn't really know how it was going to go. I just kind of had to wait and see what was going to happen, because I heard some people say he was going to get cut, heard other people say that he was getting healthy and he was closer to getting on the field. I mean, it just never worked out.
Yeah, I mean, that was something that David and I talked about a few times in passing on the podcast. It wasn't something we were going to dedicate an entire episode to, or even an entire segment, but we were looking at the cost cutting that the Buccaneers can do for the salary cap. We had mentioned it a few times in articles and columns on the Pewter Plank, and we were looking at different free agents and positions and things of that nature. So it was something that we kind of figured was going to happen. But of course, the big hang up, which, guys like Greg Allman and Rick Stroud were all over from the get-go, was that if he was cut before he was medically cleared, then the Bucs were on the hook for that salary. So they had to wait until he was cleared, so that once they cut him, they didn't owe him any money. And
Right.
He's gone off to do a visit and a tryout and a physical and all that nonsense with Seattle to go back home. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't something that caught me or I don't think it caught David by any kind of surprise. It was something that we kind of figured was going to happen, especially after they sign a center, they move Alley back, they draft another offensive lineman. It was the writing was on the wall for Sweezy from the time he basically set foot on the field last year, and was not performing the way that they thought he was going to, and that's the nature of this business. They sign a guy, he hurts his back, once he's already signed on the dotted line, and it's football. That kind of stuff happens. You just got to chalk it up as an L and keep it moving.
Yeah, that's all you can do. And again, I keep going back to that last season. He just did not seem comfortable when I would watch him and just go back and watch him on game film. He never looked comfortable in a Bucs uniform. I mean, any of the times that I saw him out there, he just didn't look like that dominant player that you saw in Seattle.
No, and I think anybody who has a profession that requires any type of physical performance will tell you that the core of your body is the most important part of your body. And once you injure your back, I mean, there's really not, you're never going to be able to come back from that. Like we see guys now with some of the medical marvels that we're able to accomplish today, come back from ACLs and MCLs and all that, and sometimes even play better than they did before they were hurt. I don't think you're ever going to be able to come back from a back injury and be better. So once that injury happened to JR, I mean, he's got the same injury I have. And granted, I'm not a world-class athlete, National Football League player, but I know what he's feeling. I know what kind of limitations that puts on your body, and just the thought. I remember, it was pre-podcast days for us, but I remember talking to James over the Peter Plank in the group messages about, I don't see any way J.R. Sweezy is ever 100%, or the J.R. Sweezy that Jason Light thought he was signing after that back injury, because just the thought of being in that squat position for as long as an NFL offensive lineman's got to be is just kills me just thinking about it. And again, I know he's an NFL player and he's got better medicine and better training and all that, but a back injury is a back injury. And I know that the last injury he just got cleared from was a leg injury, but everything's connected to the center of your body. So that leg injury could definitely have been, the back could have contributed to some of the compromising of that limb. And there's a whole, interconnectivity thing that goes on there. But bottom line is, once he hurt his back, it wasn't going to be the J.R. Sweezy we thought he was going to be, which is why Jason Light had so much flack for another bad contract. I don't know. I don't hold against Jason Light things you can't predict. Like you can't predict a tire blowing out on a car you buy the second you pull off the lot. That's just not something you can put on an X-ray machine and tell. I'm not going to blame him for a guy's disc going bad on him.
Oh yeah, and I'm with you on that right there. Because that's something that's undetectable is back injuries. You can have a physical, you can have as many physicals as you want to, and depending on the back injury, you can't detect that stuff. And what J.R. Sweezy looked like when he finished the season with Seattle, that's what Jason Light thought he was getting. This guy who was a road grinder, who was moving people out of the way, and unfortunately with that injury that he had, it just kind of set him back a little bit. Let's see here. No, somebody was asking about Justin Watson, and have you guys heard any updates on his injury? I know Michael Pless said that he should be back for camp, so I didn't know if you guys had heard anything else either on him.
No, nothing outside of that. They would expect him to be back. I haven't heard anything about him being held out longer than training camp, or not being ready at the start of training camp, or anything like that.
Okay. Ren said that he saw him running routes after the second day of minicamp. So, okay. So he should be, the one thing that I do like about this regime, and I know a lot of people don't, is they're overprotective of players with injuries, and they won't put a player out prematurely just risk re-injury. And so, if he's out there running routes, then that he should be good to go. Then another question I had for you guys, and I'm kind of going back to the running back position, the things that we saw with the red zone. I know the red zone has been a hot topic for the last couple of years. I can go back easily 2016 and especially 2017. Will the running game help the red zone in your opinion?
Oh, it would have to.
Red zone offense, excuse me.
Yeah, it would have to. It seemed like, I don't know what the problem was with the red zone offense last year. It seemed like once they got inside the 20, they forgot how to call plays. It was almost like as soon as they were inside the 20, they were in goal to go situation immediately.
And let me ask you this right off of what you said. is it the quality of talent that they have? Could that equate to the play calling? Just not having the right horses to run the plays, or do you think that's just the play calling?
I think it was a matter of as soon as they got within that striking distance, instead of continuing to push the ball down the field, gain another first down and make it a legitimate goal to go situation, you were trying to force feed your big playmakers. You were trying to force feed Mike Evans. You were trying to force feed Cam Brate. You weren't calling smart plays. There's nothing wrong with a draw play on 1st and 10 from the 18. You can pick up 4, 5, 6 yards off of a draw. There's nothing wrong with that, but it seemed like, and of course, I haven't gone back and watched all 16 games in the last week or something. So I'm just, kind of going off of things that I remember really pissing me off while I was watching.
Toss sweep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That kind of crazy. Or, you're running a end around with Bernard Reedy when you have Deshaun Jackson. You're doing that kind of stuff. Like, you were getting too cute. It seemed like Cutter got away from basic football and was trying to get too cute with things. And so I think establishing the running game more, having a running back that you can legitimately rely on, is going to be a big help in the red zone. And it's one of those things that, did they learn from last year? Did they learn that you don't have to keep throwing fades to Mike Evans every time you're down there? Did they learn that Cam Brate isn't always open on a seam route? And what are they going to do to fix it to make sure that they're putting up 6 instead of 3? Because how many games? Oh, okay.
Not to cut you off, but if you have a quality running back and your offensive line, which they appeared to have bolstered a little bit, do you see that as a factor as well in the red zone as well? I mean, you have guys that can open up holes. You've upgraded at the center position. I mean, by a lot. Yeah. And you're looking at, you have a rookie running back that, based on his game film, I can't really say for sure, but on paper, he's that guy that moves the pile forward instead of, going backwards. Giving a guy like Peyton Barber a lot more touches than Doug Martin. With him getting more touches, just getting him going. Some running backs need that kind of thing. Those types of things, could those assist in the red zone offense woes?
David, you want to take that one, or you want me to keep going?
Yeah, I mean, most definitely. But I think it's all connected. There's, of course, there's limitations to what you can call as a play caller based on the talent you have on the field. But at the same time, in theory anyway, you're spending a lot of your practices and a lot of your meetings trying to get better at some of the things that you're not so good at right now. And you can't find out if you're actually good at those things or getting better at them unless you're trying to execute them. So both of those arguments kind of play against each other, because in one case, like, you can't blame a coach for calling plays that your offense can execute well. But at the same time, if you're not calling the things that your offense isn't executing very well that you supposedly worked on all week, you can't tell if they're getting better there. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there, and that's why the coaches get paid all the money they do and take all the scrutiny they do, because at the end of the day, when you make the wrong decision, whether Jameis Winston throws in triple coverage or not, you're going to be the man who has to answer for that, because you're the head coach, and that's what you got hired for. If you don't want that job, then run back to New England and be an offensive coordinator under Bill Belichick, right? But I believe that this year it's going to be different. But again, we all have to kind of be careful, because we have not seen anybody with pads on right now in this current formation, and that's going to tell a whole lot of different things, because Ronald Jones looks great. He looked great in college. Everything on the tape looked great. Right. But we had a guest on the Locked On Bucs earlier this week who pointed out that Ronald Jones wasn't leaned on in USC to be the man, kind of like the way like a Reggie Bush was. And even with Reggie Bush, he wasn't the only running back back there carrying the ball. A lot of people forget that Lendell White had just as impressive a season as Reggie Bush did, without all the, obviously the big runs and all that stuff. Right. So how this is going to balance out.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, but when you look at the running back situation last year, and again, you make a valid point. we won't really know anything until we see the live bullets, until we see the preseason games. Even though they're vanilla plays, it's basic football where you're running and you have to hit the right hole and, have to make the most out of, all the carries you get. And that's not something that we saw last year from the running back core. When you look at Doug Martin and Peyton Barber coming combined for like 850 yards rushing in a season. So again, it's something we're going to have to wait and see. But just as a whole, just looking at the running game and the running game improving will definitely help this offense, regardless of who's under center.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, honestly, I would expect almost to see a little bit more of Peyton Barber inside the 20 than I would of Rojo, at least in the beginning. Now, if Rojo can show that he can navigate through all that traffic and find the holes and punch through the way that he needs to, then I think he'll definitely have the opportunity to kind of increase his share inside the red zone. But honestly, I think Peyton Barber is probably the guy entering camp that I would expect to get more of those short yardage and close combat type of situations.
Yeah, most definitely. Let's see. One of the listeners is saying Peyton Barber 4 yards per carry. Charles Sims 3.9 yards per carry. We'll see.
Pinnacle loves him some Charles Sims. Man.
Yeah,
sorry, Pinnacle. We are never going to see eye to eye on this ever. But I still love you, though.
Yeah. So guys, we're getting ready to wrap up. We're getting pretty close here. Any dark horses, anybody that you guys see that could make an impact on this team that we haven't been talking about? Anybody that that has been brought in or we could potentially bring in that could make an impact on this team?
I don't think they're going to be bringing anybody in outside of, maybe picking up a lesser name or signing someone off a practice squad. I don't see them going out and signing an Eric Reed or a Boston or anything like that, even with the money that they saved from cutting Sweezy. But, I think it's up to these guys to just play up to their potential. I don't want to name any dark horses. I look forward to Chris Conte, because he gets so much hate and he's not that bad.
I've been saying that I'm on the hype train too. No, he really isn't. I think, and what I've encouraged people to do is if you can get like all 22, if you can borrow from somebody, bootleg it or whatever, get out there and watch him away from the ball. Watch Chris Conte away from the ball. You figure out where the ball's going, rewind it, and watch him away from the ball. The guy is not bad. I mean, I personally don't see where all the slander comes from, but again, that's just how people view it. And, I'm not going to knock anybody for how they view it, but just from what I see, he's a guy that he gets unnecessary slander. I don't know if it's because Lovie Smith brought him in or what the ultimate reason is, but I don't have a problem with him. I'm comfortable with him being there. And until somebody beats him out in camp and physically outplays him, then, I'm good with him being here.
Yeah. I almost, before David names his, I almost look at Chris Conte, at least this season, in the Josh McCown role. And what I mean by that is he's kind of there to be the placeholder until Whitehead is ready to take over as the starter. Josh McCown was brought in as the placeholder until they got a franchise quarterback. That's kind of how I look at Conte. And again, nothing against Conte. I like Conte a lot. I think he's much better than the perception that fans have, but he's not the safety of the future.
No,
he's not going to be the guy to team up with Evans in that secondary that's going to help take this defense to the next level. However, he is serviceable enough to be effective right now in 2018.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you consider the defensive line being upgraded, and hopefully on paper that translates to the field, because that bodes well for the secondary. If you can get pressure on the quarterback, and I've said this before, people tease me, sacks are sexy. Pressure on the quarterback, that's important. Making a quarterback uncomfortable in the pocket is huge. And, if you're able to do that, it helps your secondary, and everybody benefits from that pass rush.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I kind of echo what James said. I think Chris Conte gets a little bit of undeserved hate. Of course, he's been beaten from time to time, but so is Brent Grimes. So is every defensive back in the National Football League. It's just part of the job. You're not going to win all the time. The offensive player has immediate advantage as soon as the ball is snapped, and a defensive back is literally catching up to that disadvantage from the second the ball is snapped, and it's not always going to work out in your favor. But I think that if people go back and look at it, that Conte did a lot more good than he did bad for the defense that needed some stability, and he was able to provide at least some of it. It would have gotten a lot worse if he wasn't playing as well as he was. As far as guys like kind of like under the radar, I guess I think everybody's done a really good job. You yourself, Brent Wren, so all the other guys out there that talk about the Bucs and write about the Bucs, I think everybody's done a really good job of really covering the roster from top to bottom. Even talking about guys like, Teddy Bridgewater. James wrote something about that it may not happen and he may spend his season in New York or somewhere else, but it's still, we're even talking about teams that aren't even on the roster right now, or players that aren't on the roster right now. So I think it's going to be hard to find shadow players, but I think if I was hard pressed, Javian Elliott is one. If Vernon Hargreaves gets a shot again in the regular season to be an outside corner, I think Javian Elliott's a guy that we could see compete to get some snaps there in the slot. And on the offensive side of the ball, it's kind of a tie between Sean Wilson and Bobo Wilson. I think both of those guys have the opportunity. Justin Watson, I feel like, is going to end up on the practice squad, which is fine. And I think Bobo is the guy who's going to be competing for the last roster spot in the wide receiver depth chart. And hopefully, and he's a guy, actually, we haven't even talked about him, but he's a guy who could actually have some value inside the red zone as well. Because if you pair a Mike Evans and a Bobo Wilson on the same side of the field, now you force your defense to choose. Do they want to cover the top or do they want to cover the underneath game? And whichever one they choose, you just go to the other one, so to speak. So those are kind of my guys that I'm watching that are, I guess, could be under the radar, even though, again, a lot of people are talking about them, so I don't know how under the radar they really are, but they're probably about as under the radar as a Buccaneers player gets right now.
Yeah, and for me, Bobo Wilson is somebody that I watched him last year, and I feel like his attitude has changed about a lot of stuff. He's kind of been humbled, and he didn't come out and he wasn't this big star he thought he was going to be coming out of college, and I think it's kind of changed his game up a little bit, and he's a lot more in just from what I'm seeing, he's a lot more serious about things, and he realizes that you got to go out there and work, which I think is important for everybody. So again, there's nothing wrong with having that edge, but you got to kind of have to put it all in perspective, and hopefully he'll get some snaps in, get to show what he can do come preseason. So guys, it's hard to believe we have almost been here an hour already.
Oh, wow.
But I really wanted to, I'm going to start with you, Dave. Tell everybody how they can get a hold of you. If you want to give a few sneaks, what you'll be working on, tell everybody about where you guys are now, and I'll start with you.
Yeah, so again, I'm on Twitter, DH82_Bucs. You can always find me there. And on the Locked On Bucs podcast, of course, and all my writings over at Bucs Nation now, part of SB Nation. I'm actually working on, so I just went up today, my supplemental draft preview. If you're not aware of the supplemental draft, it might be something you might be interested in. Just another wrinkle of the NFL game that some fans aren't as versed on. I kind of went into that about some of the players, because this year, there's been three players drafted in the supplemental draft since 2011, and this year there are 3 players who might be drafted just this year alone. So the class this year is a little bit more impressive than in recent years. So I kind of did a little bit of a preview there. I'm actually working right now on 2 in-depth profiles on 2 of those players. Donis Alexander is the first one I'm doing. I've got his tape up against West Virginia up right now. I'm in the middle of that. So that's what I'm working on. And then, like I said, that preparatory thing I was kind of talking about, I don't know if I'm going to write it yet. It could turn into a novel if I start writing something like that. But it's definitely something that I'm kind of thinking about. So I'm glad it came up today, because I was just thinking about that earlier this afternoon. But that's what I've got going on. And then fantasy stuff. We're getting into fantasy season. So late July, probably going to start putting out some fantasy profiles there at Bucs Nation.
All right, Mr. Yarcho.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at @JYarko_Bucs. You can find us. You can reach David or I at the Locked On Bucs Twitter account at Locked On Bucs. And yeah, everything that we're doing over at bucsnation.com. I don't currently have anything in the works. I'm sure I'll have something up tomorrow. But I wanted to let everybody know, my first column for Bucs Nation, I had kind of pointed out how Winston can get past this and repair his image with enough time. And I pointed to a column that Tom Jones did for the Tampa Bay Times saying that Winston cannot get past this. There's no way, not like Roethlisberger or Ray Lewis or Kobe Bryant did. And, that's his opinion. I wrote my opinion. And then Gil Arcia, who, of course, is the manager of the website, he came out and pointed out a few things that Tom Jones had said in the past. And so what ended up happening was Gil and Tom Jones had a conversation. So, they kind of aired out their differences and talked about things. And that interview is going to drop on Bucs Nation tomorrow morning. So everybody definitely check that out, whether you agree with Tom Jones or you can't stand Tom Jones. He's a very divisive guy, but he gets paid to write his opinion. So do we. And so that's where we are. But it's nice to be able to have civil conversations with people that you don't really agree with. We don't see that a whole lot right now. So make sure you check out Gil and Tom Jones' conversation. It's really good. I already got to check it out. So it's worth the read.
Yeah, most definitely. And I know for me, just all you guys do a great job. Everybody does a great job. I like Greg Allman, Rick Stroud, some of the Easterman. A lot of these guys, I like a lot of these guys. If there's somebody I don't like, I just pretty much mute them and I don't listen to them. I mean, that's what it comes down to. You don't have to physically attack people. I mean, there's no call for that. If you don't agree with somebody, if you can listen, like you're talking about, two guys that have differing opinions, they can come together and have a conversation. That's important. I was impressed with the listeners here because last week we did the one and only podcast on the whole Jameis Winston situation, and there were only two people. I only got two thumbs down, which I was expecting to get a whole lot more because I'm like this. I wasn't there. I don't know what happened. I know if this was me and I knew I was innocent, or on either side, you want people to have that open mind, and I think it's important to for fans, we all want one thing, is the Bucs to get back in the playoffs, win playoff games, and get to the Super Bowl, win a Super Bowl. That's what it comes down to. And I think we need to really, put a lot of the narratives aside and everybody, just kind of come together, just like Gil and Tom Jones did. I'm definitely looking forward to that article. Guys, I will be retweeting when these guys drop their podcast. I always retweet it because it's great content. You need to add it to your playlist. If you don't have it, follow them wherever they are. Where are you guys? What all are you guys on? What platforms are you guys on?
Twitter, Facebook.
Your podcasts, are they on iTunes and?
Yeah. I mean, wherever you can find podcasts, they're on iTunes, Google Music, Spotify. What else is there? Stitcher, all those. Wherever you can find podcasts, we're there.
Yeah. The podcasts are being embedded in some of the articles as well. So if you don't have a podcast platform, just pull up some of our articles on Bucs Nation. You'll find some of them embedded there as well. So there's really any way you want to do it.
Yeah, that's great. And folks, everybody, XCLU Garvey, Robert Green, thank you. Michael Pless, thank you. For Cornelius Jackson, everybody that was able to contribute in the chat. Sometimes the chat gets wild, and I really appreciate that everybody's getting to voice their opinion. That's what's important to me. Doing a podcast like this is to make sure that everybody gets heard. So that's something I try to do, is make sure that, if there's a question out there I can get out, I try to get it answered, and I appreciate you guys answering those questions. So that's pretty much it. And you can reach me at Super Heavyweight. You follow me, I'll follow you back. It's not always sports with me. I always have some random post or something like that that I'll throw out there. So, like, hey, what is this guy thinking about? But, it's fun. It doesn't always have to be about sports, but that's what kind of brings people together in this politically divisive era we live in right now. Sports can bring people together, and that's one of those things that I really appreciate about it. So, guys, thank you so much for coming on, and hopefully I'll have Pless on next time we have you on again. I want to get you guys on as we get closer to the NFL season, and especially preseason and camp, because what you guys put out is great. So thank you so much.
Oh, it was our pleasure, Gene. Thanks for having us, man. We enjoy being on with you.
Maybe you can twist Gil's arm and maybe he might be able to come on sometime.
Oof. Man, I had to argue with him for months to get him on our podcast one time.
Is there a sex tape out there or something we can put over his head or something?
I don't think so, but I'll do some digging, see what kind of dirt I can find on him.
All right, guys. Well, thanks a lot. And again, congratulations. You guys have earned this. Hard work pays off, and I love what you do, and keep doing what you do.
All right. Thank you, Gene. Appreciate it.
All right, man. And thank you, everybody, for listening. That's it for us, and you have a good night.